and welcome to Live Coding Happy Hour. Just making sure that our audio is working. It feels a little low. I hope everybody can hear me out there. Give us a check in the chat and make sure that our audio is okay. It could be anything. You know, I still have my trainee badge on from the live streaming thing. So, and I can tell why it's low too. I already set this. There, that should be much better. See, at least I know how to catch these problems. It's just like coding. Once you bang your head against the wall for 45 minutes, you won't do it again. At least it won't take 45 minutes. This is Live Coding Happy Hour. It is our way to bring you some new feature on the platform, show you something we've learned, so you learn something along with us. We get the skin knees and the bumped elbows and the bloody noses as we go, so hopefully you don't have to. Let's go around and do our introductions. We'll go blue shirt first.
It's a jumper, but anyway, hello. My name is Andrew Albury-Dor. I'm a senior ServiceNow developer MVP from Brisbane, Australia. I am very keen to get into this episode because, as you may or may not know, I'm sort of the self-appointed flow designer advocate, or fladvocate, if you will. Excited. Let's go.
All right. Brian.
Yeah. I'm Brian Bimschleger. I am a principal product manager here at ServiceNow, and I'm the PM for some of our automation tools. So Flow Designer, that we'll be talking about today, as well as Process Automation Designer, which hopefully some of you have tried out before. So our team's really, really excited about what we're showing off today. We put a lot of time and thinking into it, and we think that we're shipping something really cool and useful for you.
And if you didn't catch it, on Tuesday, Creator Toolbox, Brian was there along with Sebastian. Brad and Sebastian and Brian were showing us the data pill transforms that are new to Rome. So go look for that. I watched it this morning. Great stuff. Wish I was there live, but unfortunately couldn't have been. My name is Chuck Tomasi, Senior Developer Advocate at ServiceNow. Been here since 2010, was a customer for a couple of years before that. And I just love building on the Now platform. So fast, so easy, you can get into the weeds if you want. I know a lot of full stack developers are going, I like that bare metal approach. You know, you can do that if you want, but you're just going to have a little bit more maintenance down the road. Okay, let's just put it to you that way. Always look for that low code or no code solution first. With that, let's go around and introduce our drinks in the same order.
Sure. So as I'm sure you're aware, being from Australia, it's 7:30 in the morning, so it's a little early for a beer. I have a iced coffee, a big one, because it's Friday morning and I need it.
Oh, Brian, are you muted?
Can't hear you. Sorry, Brian.
Yeah, I have a Fremont Golden Pilsner today. So it's never had it before, but it's good so far.
Does the name suggest that it's from Fremont, California?
Normally I'd say yes, but it also says Seattle up top. So who's to know?
Had to ask, because Fremont is real near Santa Clara.
Yeah.
And I have another, Chuck might not be standing by the end of the show. I've got from Boulevard Brewing the Bourbon Barrel Quad Barrel Aged Ale, and 12.2. Serious stuff. I'll be sipping this. Hopefully, I'll be doing most of the talking, so I won't be doing most of the drinking like I did a couple of weeks ago. I got done with that episode of Live Code where I got to go sit down. This show's getting harder as I get older.
Yeah, well, you're standing up, aren't you?
You gotta stop buying the 10, 11, 12 ABV. It's gonna be a good show. Hope everybody enjoys it as much as I do. All right, our topic today is the Flow Designer error handling that was introduced in Rome. So many of us have written a flow. It's maybe down deep in an action, something doesn't go quite as expected. My favorite scenario that comes up every 90 days or so is that our credentials have expired on one of our APIs because somebody implemented the spoke with OAuth, and OAuth needs to be renewed periodically. If it was me, I would have used an API key, but I didn't write the spoke. So you kind of got to roll with what you're given. Yes, you could put a reminder on your calendar that says, hey, don't forget 2 more days till your OAuth expires. Why don't you go get a new token? All right, but there's going to be other situations. Maybe your REST API does go out and get a 200, but then comes back and says, well, that's not the right payload because some other parameter set it off. And now you get this crazy JSON parser saying, because it's trying to parse undefined from something instead of a real JSON payload. Sound familiar? Anybody else been there besides me? And it takes a while to dig in and find out what these things are. It's like, okay, that should have run. Why didn't it run? Then you open up the execution details and you see the pink message and you got to go into the step, and it's like, you really spend a lot of time. So we're going to try and mitigate some of that with the error handling at the flow level, but also at the action level. So are you ready, guys? Brian is here because he knows what he's doing. We're just going to watch. No, we're going to drive, and Brian is going to instruct. So when we have questions, he can give us the valid information. So I am going to try the Brad Tilton special here and do the screen share and transition on 3. Oh, that was one of my better transitions, if I do say so myself. Getting back might be a little more fun. All right. So what I've got is one of our very common flows to schedule a live stream. When we do this show, we have a record in our artifact manager that hits a certain state. You can see the condition right here. It's not that terribly difficult. Artifact is created or updated. The type is a live stream. The state changes to ready to publish, and we have an empty field on the draft URL. If that happens, this flow kicks off, and it does some custom actions. It formats the times because YouTube wants them in their payload in a certain way. Then this one kicks in, schedule a broadcast. Okay, the rest is kind of back-end stuff, but let me show you what we're passing in here. We pass in the title, the start time in YouTube-friendly format, and a description. And what we get back over here on the data panel is the broadcast ID and the YouTube URL, which we use in other places. If we open up this action, you can see even further that we build out the YouTube payload, and then we do a REST message out to their particular API to post, blah, 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 good stuff happens here, right? And there's our payload. So I went into this connection alias, and I purposely broke this. At least I think I did. I'm going to verify that it is still broken indeed. So if you've got reservations or you're a little confused about the whole connection alias, connection credential thing, I'm going to try and walk you through this, but I do have another video in production right now that is going to clarify a lot of this. Actually, there's several of them, including one on templates. So the connection alias is the part that Integration Hub uses, that this step is going to use. It's an abstraction, and it is part of your application. Think of it as a pointer. It's a reference to the actual credentials and connection information that it needs. You could use a different system in dev, for example, but the same alias. So as long as you flesh out the connection and credentials for each instance, which are not taken along with the application because you don't want to promote your code and go, why is production talking to my dev and test server? So down here in the connections, we have a YouTube connection, which has a credential called dev program OAuth. And you can see right now it says the tokens are not available. Click get token to go get one. So let's open up that record and try to get a token. And it's going to say, oh, guess what? I don't have the right credentials on this machine at all. I do not want to do that with the Technorama podcast. That'd be bad. I was testing this out on my laptop. Now we have another thing to try and figure out. I need to get my other account in here, that one. And I hope that's right. I hope that's right. I hope that's right. Okay, I need to get my authenticator app out here. And it says, is this you? Yes. What's the magic number? That. Okay. There we are. Oh, it sent me another one. I'm just doing the OAuth thing, but we have multi-factor enabled on YouTube. Okay. If you see this, it simply means that we haven't finished a long-term process in YouTube because we're kind of doing user-assigned credentials. But I am going to continue on. Then it says, you've asked for all of these scopes, and I will allow that. And now I have credentials. So, yay, I just fixed my problem. Show's over. No, not really. So if I test this with, I don't want to test that. I want to test the stream. And I had a test record in here. This one. Going to plug in my test value on this flow just to make sure it runs. Make sure things run. Okay. Before we break it and try the error handler, we want to make sure that it is not broken already. Testing the flow, testing the flow, testing the flow.
So is this one hooked up to the production?
It is
YouTube?
actually making a live stream for us right now. That's why I have another screen over here that I can delete it when I need it.
There we go.
And I can verify from Studio that, yes, it created topic TBD. Let's go look at our execution data. Everything completed.
That's what we like
So
to
this
see.
came back and, looks great. Now I'm going to introduce our common problem. Let's go to the OAuth manage tokens and get rid of one or both of those. I don't know which one exactly, but. And when we retest this, run it again. Brian, has that been fixed in Rome that it lets you, it doesn't force you to change this? It lets you run with the same test record?
That may have been something that we did, maybe a small defect. I thought that it cleared out, but hey.
What it used to do to
Learn
me all the
something new.
time is I'd fill in a test record and it would say, the second time I tested, it'd say, no, you can't do that. You got to use a different value, but you clear it out and put the same value in it and it's okay.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad to see that. Whoever fixed that, thank you. Now if we look at this, we get a 401.
Oh,
I said
no.
403 earlier.
Oh,
That's
no.
actually an access denied. This is authentication completely failed. And this is what happens all the time. I go to expect my stream to be created and it doesn't get created. Oh, by the way, while I'm at it, I should probably delete the one that did get created. There we go. And of course, you go through all the fun of where did it really die? It's in this step somewhere.
So
Okay, so I know I got a 401.
That little action status on the output data there, that's a new thing.
Yeah.
The action stat, where are you looking?
So
In
let's see
output
the
data.
output. Yeah, the top variable there. Every action,
Variable name.
Scroll down, Chuck.
down a little.
Oh,
Output
this
data right
output
there.
data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So this is new in Rome. So one of the things we started doing with error handling is we introduced this concept of action status. So your actions will, in theory, never fail. They'll always generate some sort of outcome for you, some sort of code, some sort of message. And we have this as a data pills that you can use. So if this action completes successfully, you'll still get a particular code and a message. And if it fails, like in this scenario, we'll get a non-zero code, and we'll get whatever message was generated by the system. So
okay, that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about, is because I had heard, as we were going through some of these pre-Rome training videos, that we could define what exactly is an error and what do you do about it.
Yeah.
Can we get our hands
absolutely
on this yet, or am I jumping ahead?
Well, we can talk about that once we dig into the Action Designer itself. So once we get into Action Designer, you'll be able to say, hey, this error that occurred, these conditions, it's not actually an error. Let's mark it as successful and keep on moving.
That's what I wanted to get to eventually. I hope we have time for that. But simplest case, if I were just, a developer looking for a quick win, down here on the bottom of Flow Designer, underneath my list of actions, is this error handler. If I turn that on, I get yet another series of action, flow logic, or subflow. So I almost think of this as kind of a try catch, and this is the catch that says it didn't work. We'll get more into that later, I think. But if I were the laziest developer in the world, I would go to like ServiceNow core send email and say, to, I'd have to give it an address, wouldn't I? Or I could use a data pill. Here, chuck.tomasi@servicenow.com. I don't think outbound mail is on this. If it is, well, good for us. Subject, your flow failed. Right?
Yeah.
Wasn't able to make a new live stream. Check the logs, check the credentials, blah, blah, blah.
Can we bring the name of the flow into the subject using data pills?
Well, I see a data pill picker.
I don't know if we can get the name of the flow, but do you know what we can do? Is we can take whatever error message was generated and
pump it into the body.
We can drop that into the body. So you can pill pick to underneath step 5 there, where it says error handler.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because we don't know which action failed.
Exactly.
Oh,
so
okay.
this will just say,
I
hey,
was going after
whatever
the action
error
status here.
Well, you can do that, and that is helpful if you always just say, hey, I know step 2 is going to be weird. I always want to get the status or message from step 2. But in a flow like this, you have 6 custom actions. Each of them have some level of complexity. You might not know where something went wrong, but you just want to catch anything. So if you pill pick into that error message that occurs that in the error handler, whatever error is generated, it can dynamically share it with you.
Oh, I want to do that.
A way I can see us using that particular thing is having a custom action that sends an event into our event management tool, and then using event management or alerts to monitor all of your integrations.
Okay, so this should now, I would expect to see error handler down here. So completed error caught, note the big orange message there. And then this is completed. And our runtime is your flow failed, error 401. Oh, the one was the error code.
The status code, yeah.
And this was the message.
Yeah.
That's more helpful. Okay. That's if you're the laziest programmer in the world.
So
but Brian's going to say there's better ideas out there to be had, right?
Well,
do you reckon we could use an action to go and refresh our auth token? Probably not.
Yeah,
because it's so
oh, that would be interesting. But then you'd have to re-trigger the flow.
Yeah. There's APIs for that as well.
Well, wait a minute.
Well,
if you got down here, you could do some logic that said, if you got a 401, right, in the error handler, if you had a 401, then I could make a custom action to go refresh that token and then call schedule broadcast again. I mean, I could just basically repeat several of these steps.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the common patterns we we see or anticipate from people. One is notifications that we're doing right now, send an email, and the other is exactly what we're talking about next, is connecting to
Secret foreboding may have been missed.
OBS Studio says reconnection successful. I hate to hit stop broadcasting. There we are. I believe we're back. There we are. I believe we're back. Yep.
Yep.
My laptop has confirmed. I just heard myself. There we are. I believe we're back. Yep. I didn't do anything. I wish I knew. Well, just one of those magic internet things. Speaking of air handling.
So where did we drop off? Was it before or after the secrets?
This is we're playing with the fates now. Karma's gonna get you. Okay, so that's one approach, right? The easy dump a message in the air handler. But what was next, Brian? You want to go to the action itself?
Yeah. Let's go into the schedule the broadcast action that you have right here.
So this does a REST API, and obviously it had a problem with the credentials.
Yep. Let's keep scrolling down to the very bottom of the inputs on this app phone. So,
response handling.
Well,
if this step fails,
one further down. Yeah. So this is new in Elm, and you have granular control over how you want to proceed within your action whenever an error occurs. So you can say, hey, I want to stop this action right now at this current step, and I want to jump to this error evaluation step that we'll cover in just a second. Alternatively, you can say, hey, we're going to swallow this error, whatever it is. This train has to keep moving, and we're just going to move to the next step within our action.
Because you might have default values or something that'll catch that. It goes, you know what? Doesn't matter. It's not critical data.
Exactly. So let's say in this example that you're walking through, we do want to stop our action, and maybe we've determined that our 401 error code and the error message that we have are not tremendously helpful, right? So let's go into error evaluation.
Yep.
Now, the whole concept of error evaluation is that whenever we have a custom action, the error evaluation step is always going to be the last thing that runs. So whether all of your actions are successful or all of your steps are successful or one of them fails, the last thing that always happens is going to be this error evaluation screen. And what's cool about this is that if stuff comes up, you get a particular type of response or some input value from one of your steps matches some particular condition, you have the ability to override the code and message that are returned back to your calling flow in that action status block.
Oh.
Yeah. So
if somebody doesn't remember what a 401 is, you could give them something a little more reasonable, or you might have company standards or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So let's build out a condition that is exactly what you just mentioned. So we'll say it's for 401 error, and let's pill pick to whichever step was causing the issue for us.
I think it was a status code.
Well, actually, let's go back. Let's pill
you want to
pick
go to the transcript from before?
No, the within the action
within
designer.
The action. Yep.
Let's go to error evaluation. The error evaluation page on the left-hand side.
Yep. I thought that's where I was.
Let's edit our condition.
Edit
there's a little pencil icon in the top right.
This one.
There you go.
Yeah, I thought that's where I was.
So let's remove this pill.
Doink. Okay.
All right. Now let's pill pick back in, and we were in the right area, just selected the wrong thing. So if we conclude the post live broadcast is the one that's causing us the error, let's click into that. And then the very last option on this list is step status.
Oh.
So if we dive in there, now we choose our code. So similar
Okay.
to on the flow level, where we have an action status that gives you a code and a message based on
Yes.
how it executed. Once we zoom into that action designer screen, that experience we're in right now, each step is going to generate an equivalent code and message that you can use.
Look, step
So-
status, step status. Wow, you guys are too logical.
So this is going to be really handy because we can say, all right, anytime this action fails or anytime it completes, we're going to check to see if the status code on step 2 right here is 401. And if that's true, then we're going to override our action code and message with whatever values we define. So let's scroll down a little.
I'm trying to remember. Was it 401? Because the email said 1. Or maybe that was the action. That was the action status. Let me just, that's why I kind of wanted to look at the
Sure.
the execution details again. Because if I go in here and it says, I failed, and I go into the
action status
steps,
code
do
was
I see the
1.
step status in here?
Yeah, we should.
Step status, code 0, success.
If we go down to the next step,
Step 3, error handle. Step status, 401. That's the status code.
That's
Steps
code.
status is code 0, success.
I
So
think
it looks like our step is or our action is actually failing on step 3, not step 2, like we anticipated.
Aha.
So it looks
Which
like
is
step 2 is
the-
completing with a 401 code, and then we're trying to do something with the output there. And
That's an
getting an error.
important note. You're right,
Mhm.
because I asked for a REST request and it came back and says, my REST request actually ran fine. It's what it returned that you don't like.
So you know what? Let's get ahead of it. Let's not even let our action fail on step 3. So if you scroll up to step 2, let's check out what some of the details are of the response that we're getting back.
So we
can
we
see
dig
our-
into the response body. It's not parsed yet, but the
Yeah,
status
but we
code
do
is
have that
401.
status code. Yeah. So let's go back into Action Designer and we'll update our condition to listen for the
Isn't
status
that what I did the
code.
first time?
Yeah, but then I corrected you. My mistake.
Well, you showed me the proper way. So status code is 401.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. And this is where I could potentially map something, but I don't have to, right?
Yep, exactly. So
Okay.
if we know that the 401 is caused because of an OAuth issue, let's update our action status message to just say OAuth credentials invalid.
You're not the one drinking the 12.2. Okay.
All right.
And I could
now-
add additional conditions. So you could have several of these and say, look, if it's a 401, that's what I want to say. If it's a 403, I got something else for you. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And there's I don't believe we have a limit on how many conditions you can add in here. So if you are a developer and you're very proactive and trying to get ahead of any errors that might be coming, or if you have a very complex action, you can get ahead of this and be proactive and output the
seems
data
like-
that you want for your errors ahead of time.
It seems like maybe there'd be an opportunity to like maybe build in an automatic catch for some of the standard HTTP responses. Like 401 is unauthorized, so if we get that from anything, we kind of know that it's going to be an error. 500 server errors, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's definitely been something. This is going to be the first release for error handling, and we have a lot of other good stuff planned, and that type of functionality is certainly in consideration for types of responses that are relatively common when connecting to external services.
Okay, so now that I got the action that's actually doing this, I mean, we could test it. Title, don't work. Start time. Oh, I can't remember the date format, but we'll go with,
Tomorrow.
I don't remember the YouTube date format. I suppose it might be on the other. We'll go with this kind of thing. I thought it was the TZ format. 08 21 T 08 da, 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 something like that.
So easy. How could we forget?
That's what you get for doing Unix for 35 years. Description. This is a test. It's not going to work anyway, so it doesn't matter. Now I'll probably get something like it broke because you sent me the wrong date format, knucklehead.
It's almost like we're trying to get it to break.
Okay, so we still get our 401 on. Is it step 3?
But look at this. If we go, so we're looking at our step output data now. If we scroll up a little bit,
scroll up,
keep going until we look at our.
There's the payload.
Actually, at our. Can we go any higher?
Can I just call out? There's a button that says "Go to error." Is that new?
that is new. And
you
that
know,
takes you
it's
to
the
where
things you never
the
look
error
for.
occurred. Well, what I wanted to show is if you actually scroll all the way to the top where we show what the actual output is for this action itself before digging into the steps. If we go to the output data section and now we click on our action status, we can see that our action status that we are
returning. This is our
returning,
value here. Okay.
Exactly. So that's our custom error message that we wrote in whenever we get that 401 status.
Where did the 1 come from?
By default, we are going to provide a value of 1 if some error occurred, and I believe that we just use a default value unless you manually specify something else.
Okay, so if I wanted that to say 401, I could just data pill pop it in there.
Yeah, you could manually type it in as well.
I could manually type it in as well, which was
So if we go
here, edit.
Boom.
Well, that wouldn't be any fun. I want the status.
It might only accept an integer there, but
all right, we'll do 401. All right, I don't need to run it again to see it failed.
Yeah.
But the okay, so we verified that our message is now in the action status. That's good. We could change the code if we want, and then the error handler can use the error handler in the flow could use those codes, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we go into our flow, once we get to that error handler section and go into send email, where we have our 6 error status code and error status message, the status code and message that our error handling section receives are going to be the status code and message of whichever action caused the error. So it's just going to inherit the troublesome step.
Okay, so if this were truly a 401, I would get an email that says, your flow failed, 401, blah, blah, blah. Okay.
It would say, your flow failed, 401, OAuth credentials invalid.
Nice. So we've made it a little more digestible to the email recipient.
Yeah. A lot more useful than not telling you about it, though.
and a little more useful than a cryptic error message. Here's a bunch of JSON. Deal with it.
So if we test this
we
out,
could even do something like have different emails for different conditions, right? Because you could say if that error status, error handler, action, code is 401, then I want to send you, a totally different message than if it was a 403.
Well, that's where we jump in and do our automated remediation of credentials.
Right. Maybe you don't need credentials if it was a 403, which is an access denied. But yeah. Okay. Dang, this is getting fun.
Yeah, you could do stuff like catch for API rate limits as well. So it's like, oh, if I've hit a rate limit, let's wait for 10 minutes and then do it again.
Yeah. Now, the one thing to know is that there is a limit on the number of actions we can, the number of items we can put into the error handler section right now. And it's 10, but that's only because we don't want necessarily people building out super complex logic within the error handler section, when something like that could be easily constructed in a subflow, and you just kick off the subflow and let that trigger the problem.
And like you said, that's the pattern we want people to follow, is put those remediation things in a subflow. Easier to test, and then easier to dump into your error handler, or potentially in the future right into the flow.
Yeah.
Is there something that we're looking at to say, if we catch an error on a particular step, then run a remediation flow and then kick off the parent flow where we left off, like retry the particular step that failed?
We're not there yet. We've been exploring some actions to help make that possible, but there are some weird kind of technical quirks that are limiting us right there. But it's certainly something that a lot of people have requested.
That would be very cool.
Now, one other common pattern one other pattern we're anticipating people to use is, first off, we have a fancy new decision table builder that's coming out to the store next month, I believe.
Ooh.
And on the Breakpoint podcast that Chuck did with Jake Berman a couple of weeks ago, Jake gave a little bit of insight into what's coming with the decision table builder. But we previously talked about, okay, if it's a 401 error, we might want to notify person X. If it's a 403, person Y. If it's 500, person Z. We could drop all of that business logic into a decision table and just have that output who we need to contact within the send email. So lots of new tools coming out to handle all sorts of logic and decisioning. And so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I have
so
to
Brian,
admit,
you said that the error evaluation gets run regardless of a failure or not. Even if you had what's traditionally called a status code 0, everything was successful, it still gets run?
Yep, it'll still get run, because the error evaluation step is kind of what determines what that overall status for your action is. So it's determining what we're returning back to the flow. So kind of the way it works is it will just, by default, if you don't add any conditions, it's just going to set your action status to whatever the status of your most recently completed action was.
Okay.
So if everything's all good and no errors, it will technically, like in this example, it would take the status code and message of the successful step 4 and map those.
Is that also the case with the flow, that the error handler gets run at the end?
Error handler will only get run if there is an error in the parent body of the flow. So if your steps or your actions 1 through 5 here run successfully, then the error handler section won't get triggered.
Gotcha. So looking for a 200 or a 201 wouldn't make any sense here.
No.
Okay.
But I think if we test this out now, we might be able to see, in theory,
I feel like it's still half-baked because we got this tucked under here, but okay, did I save and publish? I saved, but I didn't publish. Oh, other new feature. We didn't mention this yet before, but note the messaging. This action uses features that are not included in your Integration Hub subscription. So if you're working in, say, dev, and you didn't have the subscriptions for that, you know that you might have an issue if you push to prod. Other note is, it said it when I first opened up the flow, it said the same thing in a blue banner message. So watch for those. That's new in Rome also.
That little blue icon adjacent to the active status indicates the same thing. And it's handy because it tells you exactly what is causing that error.
Nice.
Or not an error, but the warning,
Yeah, I will call out that I saw that in our sub-production instance. However, our production instance is licensed for that stuff. So it may be because it's on a different version, perhaps.
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 Perhaps you need a clone.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, so that's been published. So therefore, I should be able to test. Nope, thought I still had that in my copy paste buffer. Not today. I need the short description or the title off of this one. There it is.
And if
We
this
haven't
all
figured out a
goes
topic
according
for
to
that day.
plan, step 2 should fail, but it should go to our error handler, meet our if condition, and try and send us an email that says OAuth credentials are invalid.
And it will still show up in this transcript as an error.
Yep.
That evaluated to true, so we recognized it as a 401 from our custom action output. And theoretically, system mailbox outbox should have, look at that.
Hey,
You can't do
Awesome.
much better than that.
So Chuck, you got to finish the rest of your beer as a success.
I'm not even half done. I'm flying right now. Brian, anything else you want to show? We've got like 15 minutes. Is there anything else that you want to spotlight in Rome Flow Designer or Integration Hub?
well, error handling was the big one.
Oh yeah.
And we think it's going to help a lot of people because believe it or not, we keep an eye on the community, and it seems like almost every week we get an idea from someone suggesting that we do or support native error handling. So this was a big lift by a lot of different teams, and we think the end result is pretty sharp.
Oh, I can imagine the discussions that happened behind the scenes to get all this in place.
Yeah. So
Did you wanna-
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, Chuck, if we've got a bit of time, did you want to just have a flick through those data pill modifiers that we were talking about?
Sure.
There was some
So,
big changes.
just
in
real
there
quick,
as
I
well.
noticed in the error handler, there's an action status as well. So what
Yeah.
would be the point if your action down here had an error? What would you do with it?
Well, if you have an error within your error handler section, and now we're like real inception level of errors going
That's where I was going.
If you have an error within your error handler section, then your flow will error. It will have a final state of an error, because there's no error handler for your error handler. So, but
Does it throw an event that you might be able to catch?
not right now. It'll just set the state of your flow to error. So if in effect, you would be back at your current functionality in Quebec, where your flow errors and you might not know about it.
Okay. Maybe we need to trigger an event that's like flow.error handler.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I suppose the
You're
other-
talking about the
Yeah.
Andrew, you were referring to our data pill transforms?
Yeah, I haven't had a good look at these, so I'm interested
Okay.
to.
Tuesday's show. So we have a number of new transforms in the data transforms. So underneath, say my description is a string field.
Mhm.
You get the little plus FX, which was there before. We've added a whole bunch more. And if my memory from less than 12 hours ago is any good, minus the beer, suggested transform is based on the type of variable. So if it's a string variable, it's going to recommend some string things for you, which are very handy.
Mm.
We've got some.
We've just had a comment. We currently have a custom action to format the times. Is that something that we could do with the date and time transformer?
Potentially, we should be able to. I think with our date transforms, we can convert string to date and then backwards as well. So I bet if we played with it, we could define some of that formatting that we want to parse into a date. And then
Yeah. So what's
Yeah,
under
to
the
and
date time option there, Chuck?
There's a format the time step. Could you also use a data pill? So the date and time, I recall Brad's example for one of his date fields was, hey, this date field is in 4-digit year, month, day, but I'm an American, I'd like to transpose that. And he did that with just a real simple data pill transform.
Mm.
yeah, so if you have a date field and you use date to string,
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Look at
We can
that.
click and view more. And what you could do is you could choose
Yep.
one of these presets, or if we scroll down within here, it provides the syntax to write
build
your own.
your own custom one.
Yeah. So
Yeah, so you could
keep
just
on scrolling down.
take a date time
Mhm.
field, and that'd save you a
Look
whole
there.
step.
Yeah.
And I forget if it was you or Sebastian, Brian, that said you have a routine task that says Tuesday, or you picked out the day in there.
Yeah. So I built a way to connect to our internal ServiceNow instance, just to figure out the stuff I need to do that day, things that were assigned to me. And then I just email myself with a digest of those things and format the subject to say, Thursday, August 5th, 2021.
I love how custom is first.
Yeah.
No assumptions there.
Well, custom format also shows up even if you don't select it. So there's a
Yeah.
little bit of tightening up we need to do.
Look
So
at this. You see,
that one-
you could transfer it right to the ISO date time, which means if again, I'm making an assumption here, but if this format the times custom action is doing what I think it is, we don't need that action anymore. We could just change the start time to do a data transform at the same time.
Is that date to string new in Rome, or is that
I think date to string has been out
a
since
little while?
Quebec or Paris, maybe.
Mm.
But
Yeah,
I think
the cool new stuff that I've seen is around the key pair and some JSON actions in here, I think.
Yeah, the key value pair is within utilities.
Mhm.
And what that will allow you to do is you can modify the value of your data pill at runtime. So you can say, hey, whatever the value of this data pill is, if the value is Chuck, I want to change it to Brian. And if the value is Andrew, I want to change it to Brian. But if the value is Brian, I want to make it to Sebastian.
Yeah,
Was that a
nice.
data pill transform or was that an action?
It's a data pill transform. Yeah,
Oh,
within the utilities
okay.
section. Yeah.
So if I take the string,
I believe it's within the utilities section. Key value map at the bottom.
There we go.
So what's cool
I did
is,
add that. That's really handy if you're transforming a number, use it like a map, almost like a lookup table.
exactly. It's not the best if you're trying to map a ton of different values, but if you're trying to consolidate a bunch of options into a couple more standardized ones for use later on in your flow, it's a great opportunity to clean your data a little bit.
It only works on strings though. Oh, I clicked through the docs. But yeah, for a finite or a relatively short list, this would be great.
Mm-hmm. Now, some of the other ones that we added in Rome that are really handy and play really nice with flow variables, which we introduced in Quebec, are going to be some of our math transforms. So we introduced some functionality for basic math here with your simple operations: add, subtract, multiply, divide, etc. And where they get really handy is within a for each loop, or within a do the following until loop. Now there's a way for you to create a flow variable that acts as your index or your iterator through the loop. And each time your loop runs, we can take that flow variable and add 1 to it. Or if you only want to run 10 times, you start at 10 and decrement each time you go through. So pretty handy from that regard.
Just yesterday, I built a paginated REST request in this and used the flow variables to pass the next page. It was definitely something that I should have done with a data stream action, but it was a CSV. It's a CSV response. So data stream only really deals with XML and JSON, and I was having all sorts of problems trying to parse those.
Oh, interesting concept. Yeah. So you almost built like the pre-processing part of your data stream into your flow.
Oh, I had to build the entire data stream into a flow. But yeah, if anyone wants to drop a line to the integration hub guys and let them know that data stream actions need to be able to parse CSV responses, I would be greatly appreciated.
I know a guy.
Awesome.
The other thing that I love about the transform functions is you can stack them up. So if I take like this string field and I say, go to the string, split this on a comma, split, separator is comma, and I apply that, it shows up here. And then I say, now
last item from array,
get last item from array, apply that, it just piles it all up. So you can keep stacking these up as much as you want. Maybe the last item in array is separated by a different delimiter, so you could split that, and so on and so forth. So
like
I don't see a way to
CSV
reorder
response.
them, but you can obviously cancel them.
If you've got a CSV response, the first thing would be to split on line break, and then you'd need to split on a comma and separate the first response as your headings and the next responses as all of your data.
You sound like you've done this before.
Oh, almost, maybe.
All right, good review. Again, if you didn't get a chance to watch, go watch Tuesday, August the 3rd, Creator Toolbox on the ServiceNow Developer channel. I am going to try and stop the screen share and go back to our, well, apparently I already did. Transition back to that. There we go. That's what you get for live coding happy hour. So thank you for guiding us through that, Brian. That was a lot deeper and more detailed than I ever would have experienced on my own, with all the different codes and error handling and the steps and the action outputs. Yeah. There's a lot of good stuff in there, and you can kind of see the way it sort of builds on itself in a nice logical format.
The way we kind of anticipate some usage is you might know about some errors ahead of time, and then as your flows continue to run and encounter new different scenarios, fail in different ways, you can keep updating your flow to really just get ahead of that and really can future-proof your flow as you go on. So
yeah.
So we rate our drinks. Andrew, you go first.
Well, I had a coffee, and it's very hard to give a coffee anything other than a 5 out of 5 because it's still early in the morning, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
how's your Fremont, Brian?
I would say my Seattle Fremont Golden Pilsner was pretty good. I'll give it a 4. 4 out of 5. I think that's still pretty good. Yeah.
The Boulevard Brewing Bourbon Barrel Quad Barrel Aged Ale. That's just a mouthful, isn't it? That's a crazy label. And I have its cousin, the Whiskey Barrel Aged something or other, still in the fridge. This one is very smooth, very rich. It is a darker beer, very darker. And with the success factor, boy, I'd go back to that, but I'd go back to it in smaller portions. I'm going to give that a solid 5. That is one of the few 5s I ever give out. That is just a all-around nice beer. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you, Brian, for all of your assistance. We could not have done this without you. Andrew, great. I love the input and the use cases you threw out there for us, especially since you've done some of these use cases before in the past. And I think we've all hit that wall where we go, why did my flow stop? And now we can see clearly and get informed about what happened. Maybe it's not a notification, but it's a remediation action. Maybe it's a log to a log table that triggers another flow that goes, hey, there's something you want to look at in this. I'm coming up with all kinds of ideas on apps that I've written for how I want to catch those flows. And this is another wonderful use case of why you want to use Flow Designer over scripted or over the legacy workflow. so you can get that error handling into the whole process of your flow. So,
yeah, and you can give it to people that aren't quite as deep code as you are. You can say, here is Flow Designer, and here is a way to catch those errors and notify people when it doesn't happen. And, oh, we've got a company standard action that we've built for errors, so feel free to use this one over here.
yeah, I could see a whole library of these handlers.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Any announcements? He asks himself.
Nothing from me right now. Like you mentioned before, Chuck, I'd say if whoever's watching, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to go back and watch the Creator Toolbox from a few days ago. We would go a little bit deeper into some of the transform functions, have a couple good use cases to show how they evaluate at runtime, and get to see them in live examples. So it's pretty cool.
We have the Tech Now episode from July 27th that came out. I just posted that, I want to say Monday, to the YouTube channel, to the community. It's got the collective of platform features in Rome, including the error handling. It's a lot of slideware, so it's going to be an overview of these things, and we're going to use Creator Toolbox and Live Coding Happy Hour to dive deeper into those so you can see demonstrations of them. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that we can't do demos of and fit into an hour logically, or just wouldn't do justice to any of them. We've also got the Breakpoint that you referenced with Jake Berman, was released yesterday on the 4th. So look for that, devlink.sn/break-point if you want to find that. And I'm thinking about what's coming up next week. I honestly cannot recall. Brad's going to slaughter me, but I can't recall what our topic next week is. It's either ATF or integrations, but we'll figure it out. So keep tuned, stay subscribed, turn on those notifications. You'll find out what's coming, and more great stuff as we continue on through early access in Rome, and through like mid-September. We're going to keep pumping this information on you, all the great stuff that makes up the developer stuff. Get yourself a personal developer instance, developer.servicenow.com, upgrade it to Rome if it's not already on Rome, and start exploring, read the release notes. There is a lot of great stuff out there. And it's little things like this. I mean, I don't mean to, this is not a little thing, but it's those hidden gems that you go, oh, now we can go. You know, there always seems to be something in every release that goes, where was this when I was on that last project and needed it? Well, now we have it. And if you spot something that you want, or you want to, change something, Brian mentioned, things that we're working on, things that we're thinking about. We want to know how you're using this. Go to the community and go to the idea portal, put something on there, upvote it if it's already on there, and let us know what's on your mind and how you're using it, what you like to see, where there's gaps, because that's the way we're all going to make this better. Brian, you did hint at one other thing before we were rolling the cameras. Did you want to mention that at all?
Oh, what did
you'd mentioned like a try-catch kind of scenario coming up.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we are considering for a future release and done a little bit of work on is being able to be more granular with how you catch your errors. So in Rome, we have this big error handler section at the bottom, which is great for handling any error that occurs. We have our action designer error handler where you can go in the steps. But for a little bit of our more advanced users who are familiar with that kind of try-catch concept from programming, we're exploring adding a try piece of flow logic that you can drop right into the main portion of your flow. So you can just listen for actions 2 or 3 or 4, and if anything happens there, you can have your own handler within the context of your flow, and then you could just keep on moving.
Very nice.
Throughout your flow. Yeah.
And our newest developer advocate, Earl Duque, mentioned that next week is Integration Hub imports. That's cool stuff that I want to see. So look forward to that. Like I said, subscribe, turn on those notifications, smash that like button. You know what to do, kids. All right, I am going to transition us over to the video. Everybody wave, smile, and say goodbye. Thanks for joining us.
See ya. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.